Look at a chess player locked in intense concentration. Their body is completely still, but internally, they're executing a massive cognitive operation. This creates the black box problem of human cognition. We cannot see a thought while it happens. We can only infer what strategies someone was evaluating by watching the moves they eventually make. In our daily lives, we use the word think to mean anything from remembering a name to expressing uncertainty. But in psychology, the term has a much more specific, independent meaning. Psychology defines thinking as an organized, goal-directed process. It's the internal mental work of manipulating information to solve problems, make judgments, and plan for the future. To understand how we actually process the world, we have to look inside that black box and identify the specific components that make up the anatomy of a single thought. The brain cannot process a void.
To function, the thinking process requires specific raw materials, the internal building blocks that give thought its shape. The most basic blocks are images. These are mental pictures of objects or experiences we've already had. In thought, we manipulate these internal symbols rather than the actual objects themselves. We also use concepts, mental shortcuts that group things together. When you hear the word elephant, your brain doesn't just see one animal, it accesses a whole class of shared characteristics and personal experiences. Then there are symbols and signs. External markers like a traffic light substitute for complex ideas, telling us how to act without requiring new analysis. Language is the most efficient vehicle. This is why you might catch yourself talking through a problem. Externalizing thoughts helps the brain organize problem-solving steps. Thinking even has a physical footprint.
As we engage in deeper thought, our muscle tension naturally increases, linking cognitive effort to muscular activity. From mental imagery and linguistic shortcuts to the physical energy in our muscles, these are the essential materials the brain uses to assemble higher-order logic. Once the brain has its raw materials, it needs a blueprint. It arranges these blocks into different modes of thinking depending on the obstacle. At the base is perceptual thinking, interpreting the sensations immediately in front of us. Above it is conceptual thinking, using abstract generalizations to solve problems efficiently. For complex challenges, reflective thinking reorganizes past experiences to find insightful solutions without trial and error. Creative thinking takes a different path, divergent thought. This is the ability to create something new by looking for unusual relationships between old elements. Critical thinking is the highest order discipline. It requires stepping away from personal bias to objectively analyze and evaluate information for an unbiased judgment. Of course, our minds also wander. Non-directed or associative thinking, like daydreams and fantasies, happens when the brain drops its goal and lets thoughts float freely. Human cognition is constantly in motion, shifting between these 6 architectural blueprints to meet the changing demands of our environment. If we zoom back out from these categories, we can see how they fundamentally change how we move through the world. When looking at a painting, you aren't just seeing colors and strokes. You go beyond the visual data to interpret what those elements actually mean. Your brain takes that sensory input and manipulates it, relating the image to your existing knowledge to create an entirely new meaning that is added to your experience. Because we have access to these different building blocks and blueprints, thinking is a tool we can consciously apply to our lives. Whether we are using critical logic to find the truth or creative divergence to build something new, we are using the architecture of thought to turn raw information into a world we can completely understand.